Hello everyone, my name is Peter Amor. This is the first of a series of monthly video blogs running over the next 12 months to try and tell you all about a unique British product called cask-conditioned beer. I've been in the brewing industry for 40 plus years. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and come to recognise the very importance of British beer and its uniqueness. So this is a journey around brewing, how the beer's made, what's special about it, pubs, the history, the politics of it all, and all the people that are involved in the industry. So let's go on a journey. Cheers to British beer.
Have a drink, please.
Right, let's start our journey by looking at the four main ingredients that go into making British beer, that wonderful, unique, fresh, lovely product. Those four main ingredients are water, which the brewers call liquor, malted barley, hops and yeast. So let's go on the first stage and look at water and its importance.
Here we are in Burton-on-Trent. So when I did the introduction, I talked about the four main ingredients in brewing. The first one I mentioned was water, or what the brewers call liquor. The naturally occurring spring water here in Burton-on-Trent produced the finest of pale ales, bright, sparkling, with a clarity and taste not surpassed by anybody else. On such liquor, brewing fortunes like Bass, Marston's and other major brewers were built, and water became the main reason. Nowadays, brewers traditionally throughout the country Burtonise their water. That means they put back into it the natural hardness which occurs here in Burton-on-Trent. Burton-on-Trent water naturally contains gypsum and Epsom salts, and that hardness creates the right chemical conditions in the mash tun, which uses the second ingredient to create perfect worts for brewing perfect beer. We're here now at a traditional floor maltings. Grain is soaked in water. The barley grains are swelling and absorbing that water, ready to start germination. The soaked barley, having been put onto the malted floor, will remain there for about 5 days, where the barley is turned to make sure that the rootlets don't stick together and a correct, even germination takes place.
So here you see that the rootlet is formed, which will be discarded later. But if I break this open and release that starchy bit inside, whereas before it was hard, now it smears out and it's in paste-like way.
Starch is modified, but it's still very damp, so into the kiln to be dried. Here we see the kiln being emptied, and here's the result, dried down to 3% moisture, lovely, sweet tasting barley ready for the brewer. Lovely. Here we are in a beautiful Herefordshire hop yard. Behind me, Golding hops, being gathered in by the tractors now, be taken to the picking machine. This is the flower of the hop plant. This is the important part that the brewer wants. And the real bit that causes all the flavours in the beer is these resins based in at the base of the hop flower, these yellow sticky resins. This is an English Golding hop, subtle flavours, beautiful in beer. These hops have come off the field, brought in by the tractors, and they're going to go through this machine, separate all the binds and the leaves off. It then goes to the kiln where the hops are dried and can be stored throughout the year for the brewers to use.
Right, we've talked about the cooking medium for beer, which is the liquor. We've talked about the main ingredient, which is the malted barley, and we've talked about the flavourings, which is the hops. And now we come to the bit that turns the whole thing alive, yeast. Yeast is a single cell fungus, effectively, a member of the Saccharomyces group, of which there are about 1,500 strains. Brewers use one called Saccharomyces cerevisiae, or particularly ale brewers do.
Right, so we've looked in the laboratory at yeast, and now we've come across to the fermenting room in the brewery to actually look at the yeast as it's been drawn, ready to go into the next brew. So come down here to this bucket. Here we have yeast as it's been skimmed from the fermenting vessel, held in a sterilised bucket, ready to go into the next brew. Right, here we are in the fermenting room, looking at the first stage of a brew. The yeast has been added into this brew about 12-14 hours ago, and what's formed is rocky heads, the first start of the brew as the yeast is growing. It's a false head, it will collapse down and the yeast will then multiply and grow to the top of the beer, and we'll see that in another fermenter in a minute. The yeast has been there for nearly 3 days. The yeast has risen to the surface and during this growth phase has multiplied 4 to 5 times. It's been converting the sugars to alcohol, giving off carbon dioxide gas. And after another couple of days, the fermentation will be complete and the brewer can then skim from this the yeast he requires for the next brew. When the fermentation is complete, the beer is chilled down, the yeast has been removed, the beer goes to a racking tank. The final check the brewer will do will be take a sample from that tank to check the amount of yeast still remaining in the beer. It will be between 0.5 and 2 million cells per milliliter. Those yeast cells are the ones that create cask-conditioned beer because they will still work in the cask, putting the final life and condition into that wonderful beer.
Okay, so we've had a quick look round at the raw materials that make fine British beer. The liquor, the malted barley, the hops and the yeast. Next month we're going to go down to the brew house and see how the brewer, with that combination of science and art, converts it into fine British beer. So here's to the next trip. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Terry Jones, and British beer is something you can't get anywhere else in the world. It's absolutely unique and it's a wonderful living thing. Cheers.